and welcome to my channel. My name is Heavenly. Today I want to share my restoration process for my Connecticut Chair Wheel. The main focus of the video is to give you a behind the scenes look at the work I've done to restore this wheel and to improve its function. If you want to know more information about these types of wheels and their history, stay tuned for a follow-up video. Before I jump into this process, I do want to share a little bit of a backstory. So I purchased this wheel in September of 2019, and this was done through an online auction. When I first saw the wheel, I noticed that the wheel had been restored once before. So this is what the wheel looked like when I brought it home. The newly restored parts included a flyer, a distaff, and also threaded knobs. I decided to stain the newer parts so that they would closely resemble the color of the original wheel. And this is the result. It didn't occur to me at the time that the wheel would need more work. I actually spun on this wheel for a few years before I discovered a major issue. And this issue was actually hidden behind one of the threaded knobs. So let's take a look at my spinning wheel so I can show you where and why this restoration needed to happen. All right, here is my wheel, and this is the area where the issue occurred, this front knob. So this front knob is a really important part on these wheels, and this front knob is responsible for any adjustments that would be made to the mother of all here. When this knob is loosened, I'm going to loosen it now so you can see it. When it's loosened, the flyer assembly can be positioned closer to the drive wheel if I move it slightly to the right, or I can allow it to lean further away from the drive wheel to put tension on my drive band material. So whatever adjustment I need to make, I can do that, and then I can turn this knob to the right and tighten it so that it will actually stay that way. Now, when you're spinning, you don't want this knob to loosen. If it does, your drive band material more than likely will jump off of the drive wheel here and cause a lot of issues. All right, the hidden problem for this wheel was behind the knob or nut here. This knob had a little bit of flax that was wrapped around the worn screw threads. It held the knob tight against the front leg, and if you were to tighten it, it stayed in place, but over time, the flax stuffed in there would break down. It was a nice surprise when I took the knob off, and after having issues with the drive band and take-up issues while spinning, seeing that there was flax underneath the nut. I took the knob off and I removed the flax and saw that the screw threads were in poor condition. This is why I needed to do some restoration work on this wheel. This is what the screw thread looked like without the flax. Look how freely the knob moves when there is no support. So imagine trying to spin on this wheel. The next step is to take the wheel apart so that I could get full access to the damaged part. And in order to do this, I would have to remove square pegs from the frame. And I also will have to remove the back of the frame in order to remove the entire mother of all. That will allow me to see the screw threads that were hidden behind the frame, and it will also give me access to the entire piece, so I know how to go about recreating this particular part. I am directly behind the frame, and I used a Robertson driver bit that I wrapped with gauze and secured with a rubber band. I also used a nylon or rubber tipped hammer to gently tap out the square pegs from the back of the frame. So this is how I go about doing this. And let's see how far I can get the peg out. So the peg, it's almost on its way out. It's not all the way there. It's actually still stuck. So from here, I decided to make my own square pegs from scrap wood out of my wood shop. And I decided to coat them with a little bit of paraffin wax. So this is just a video of how I go about this process. I melt a little bit of the wax and allow it to drip right onto the square peg that I made. And I just want to coat it really well so that it's a little bit easier to remove those original pegs from the frame. All right, so I take the square peg that I made, and it's a little bit smaller than the original pegs, so it fits into the slot really nice and it won't get stuck. So I just hammer that with the same hammer that I used before. I tap it, and now when we look at the other side of the frame, you could see the peg just pops right out. I continue with this process until I remove all of the square pegs that keeps the back frame attached. Right, then I have two more on the other side. And here is the back frame on the floor. And now I can get a better look at the screw threads. So not only can I see the ones that were worn, but I also get a good idea or a good look at the ones that are in pretty good shape that are right behind the ones that were worn. So now I can have some sort of action plan, and I also know how long of a dowel I might want to use to replace these threads. Thankfully, this spinning wheel has 7 threaded nuts or knobs, and the mating screw threads all have the same threads per inch or the same thread pitch. So that means I can use any of these existing screw threads in order to recreate the part that I need to make. And so here is an example of one of the screw threads that I use as an example and as a reference to do so. So this is my sketch. It took a while to get the thread pitch correct. After I do the sketch, I'm ready to mount the dowel onto my wood lathe. So I've marked different areas where I would like to create the threads. and I have lines that are pretty much a guide to help me see where the valleys are. I use a file to really get into each valley and to narrow those spiral lines. And I also use the lathe when it's off. I make sure the lathe is not turned on ever. For safety reasons, I keep the lathe off, but I can manually move the lathe towards me so that I am not using too much forward pressure as I use the file and really create deep grooves into the screw threads. So this takes a ton of filing. Another approach would be to use a Dremel to create some deeper cuts into the doweling, but a file will work. It just takes a very, very, very long time, and you will need a file that can fit in the grooves really well. A miniature file seems to do really, really, really well. After a ton of filing, I like to sand the piece and just knock off some of the sharper points so that I can test the threads in using one of the threaded knobs or nuts to see if I need to make more adjustments or if it's a perfect fit. So this is my test, and it's looking pretty good from here. All right, so this is before, where the worn screw threads are, and then we'll get to see what the new screw threads look like. That looks so much better. And this project is the first time I have created screw threads by hand. I've gone through this process again for another wheel. So the next step is to remove the old dowel and replace it with the new dowel. I didn't get a ton of footage on how I replaced that part, but I was able to cut off the old piece and secure the new piece in its place. I also decided to stain the part so that it would look similar to the rest of the wheel. Again, just more of an aesthetic thing. It has nothing to do with the function. And now this wheel is fully restored. Thank you so much for joining me in this restoration process. Stay tuned for the next video where I share a project that I made using this wheel. Also, stay tuned for a follow-up video about the Connecticut Chair Wheel history. I hope you enjoyed what you watched. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment below, and share with your friends. All right, until next time, happy spinning.